trying to get him. I can't. No, it's going inside Paul.
Panda hasn't shown up for the show yet tonight, so we're kind of wondering where he is. Did one of you scare him off, offend him, or something?
I mean, anything's possible.
Poke him a couple times there, Jeff. See if he sees a...
Hey,
no,
Panda, you up there?
nothing. All right. Well, I guess we'll just do this one without him.
Someone's going to have to take over his welcome home. Someone's got it. And that might be me.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DVC Show. I'm your host, Paul Krieger, joined as always by my lovely wife, Amy Krieger.
Hello, and Panda's at work.
And yep, there's no Panda there. There's just a silhouette of a person. Nobody there whatsoever. Do you want to do his intro there? Oh, geez.
Yep. Welcome home.
Oh my goodness.
It's like I have these glasses on so you can't see my tears because Panda's not here for the show today. Yep. So that's why. These are from,
I know there's supposed to be two Mickey heads, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at them as just a bunch of circles, they look really funny.
My brother and family brought them back because they went to Tokyo for work, and they went to Tokyo Disney Sea, and they brought these back and gave them to me on Sunday. This is the first time that I've had them on for more than 3 seconds, and I'm extremely dizzy right now.
Yeah.
All right, that's Derek DeBoer, everyone. And Jeff Haslam, who I feel like he's just going to sign off the show after these intros at some point.
We are off to a rough start today. Yeah. Hey now.
Yeah. Now you stole his. All right, we'll go to this shot. Panda is perfectly fine, everybody. We actually mentioned on a recent live stream that he recently got a new job, and we're super excited for him, but like the initial training period and everything is going to affect him being for like the first show when we film these for the next couple weeks. And then we'll be able to kind of get our schedules all back together. So you get us. And apparently our intros are a lot shorter without Panda because we didn't have much to talk about. But how are you guys this week? Jeff, you just said it feels like we've not seen each other for a while, but I know I saw you within a week.
He was not talking
just
about
Derek.
you.
I see you guys all the time, but Derek never comes.
You're tired of us. All right, I'll go.
No, I'm never tired of you. You're the ones that didn't want to come see me the other day, even though we were in the exact same spot.
We were busy. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. My favorite thing about this whole thing, though, is we've already talked about where Panda is, and the number one comment in the comments will still be,
"Where's Panda?" Yep. I'm gonna have to put it like in the title of this video, like Panda left, sad face.
Also, I don't know if you guys saw any of our live show from Sunday, but Paul talked all about you. A lot of
and
snacks.
It was very sweet. I actually did. I didn't watch it live because I was actually doing Keys to the Kingdom at Magic Kingdom.
Oh, how was that?
It was very cool. I've done it before, but Amy and the friends that we went with had never done it, and it's a little bit of a bummer because we didn't get to see some of it because of the construction going on at Big Thunder and surrounding it. But it's still very, very cool. In fact, I wanted to film a vlog for the show for it, but they said absolutely no filming, even when you're on stage.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you might be getting a blog instead. Because I do think it's something that people would, in our group, would really enjoy hearing about and seeing if it's worth the money. But
yeah, we've never done any of the really behind the scenes tours other than behind the seeds.
Yeah, and that was like $20 when he did it.
I would do that 100 times in a row. Like I
would. I
love
just
the
would
land.
Do it when it's not really hot outside, because when it's hot outside, the greenhouses are actually a lot worse.
It's hot everywhere when it's hot outside. Jeff, were you hot?
I was melting. I literally thought I was going to die at the Magic Kingdom. We got to, because halfway through they serve you lunch as part of the package, and we walked out of Columbia Harbor House, and I thought that this is it. This is where I die.
Was the lunch at least good?
It's just Columbia Harbor House. It is good. That's my favorite quick service at Magic Kingdom. But
yeah.
When it's 110, there's nothing better than just creamy, thick, fried fish. It's
right.
Perfect palate cleanser. Good choice.
Yum.
In fact, when you guys were doing the live show, back to that for a second, I almost called in because I know how we access this little situation. Because we were on the boats floating past the cabins, I was going to call in with my camera and say, "Which one are you in? Which one are you in?" But
You totally should have done that.
But it was very sweet what you guys said about us, and we love you to pieces, and just happy to be a part of this team.
It's crazy. This is show 301. No, I'm sorry, I lied. This is show 302 because show 301 is actually happening after this show. That's just it's all numbered in my head. Everything's made up and the numbers don't matter. I feel like we've hit 300. Why don't we just stop numbering the shows at this point? So, but we are talking, I feel like you could put this into that Back to Basics series that we've kind of been doing this year a little bit with Disney Vacation Club. So, Amy, you actually came up with this topic and then told me 5 minutes ago that you're not prepared for it.
I'm not prepared to host it, but yes. The topic is, how many points do you need? Now, we're not going to be able to say you need exactly 234 points, but we can give you things to think about, questions you need to answer for yourself, and resources and the knowledge to determine around how many points you should buy if you're a new buyer or if you're an existing member who's finding yourself needing more points. Like, how many points does your family need?
Yeah. And if you're looking for a place to get those points, our sponsors over at the World of DVC can help with that. DVC Resale Market, if you're looking to buy, or what are you pointing at?
I was
What are you pointing at?
You're pointing in the wrong direction. Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. DVC Resale Market, where you can buy or sell a Disney Vacation Club contract. Monera Financial, who will assist in financing that DVC Resale Market purchase. The DVC Rental Store, where you can try before you buy, rent some points, or rent out your own points for cash. And another new brand that has actually come under the World of DVC umbrella, Unlocked Magic. Unlocked Magic is your home for all things discounted tickets. So the best ticket discounts for Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando can be found at unlockedmagic.com/DVC fan. So head over there as well.
To be fair to Jeff, Derek is on this side when I'm looking at the screen, but it looks like I'm pointing the wrong way.
Yeah. Usually I'm pretty good, but we're out of order today, so it's freaking me
confusing.
Jeff, save us. Give us an idea of how many points, like, how did you make, I feel like it's good to give our personal experiences in how we made these decisions at first. Like, when you first joined the club, what were those decision-making processes that went on in your head, 17 million spreadsheets that you made to maybe come up with how many points do I need at first?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as I was thinking about it today, I fully admit that I did my point system wrong. And I did, well, here, I'll just tell you. So I bought a lot of points at one resort, and all of them were fairly large contracts. And it was shortly after I did that, I realized that the Paul and Amy's strategy is a little bit more realistic, and we can get into that in a minute. But I kind of did a pie in the sky thing. I'm like, all right, between Amy and I, we have 5 kids, we have 3 grandkids. What's it going to take to bring everybody all at once? And I looked at all the point charts for all the resorts, and I kind of threw them on a spreadsheet and said, all right, at the very lowest end, we can stay here. At the very highest end, we can stay here, but we're always going to need a 3-bedroom. And so I went a little crazy on points. Come to find out, none of us can all travel together at the same time, like ever. And I quickly realized I way overbought. And so I backed off. I've sold some contracts. Derek helped me get out of my hole a little bit. And I've kind of just settled on 1 bedroom is where I like to stay. I'm not a studio person because it just feels like staying in a hotel. 2 bedrooms overkill unless we have friends in town. So I kind of went middle of the road. And I just kind of looked at how many it would take on average to stay 2 weeks out of the year. Obviously, this was before I moved here. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I ended up.
And that's kind of the rarity, like in terms of your process of actually overbuying. I feel like you almost, It is one of those situations where it's hard to really pinpoint that exact number. And I think that's also why it's important to engage in that conversation, whether you are buying direct or resale. Talk to that agent as you're kind of having those conversations. And I think that's really the first piece of advice we have to give is talk to that agent and also come in with a game plan of, when do we want a vacation? What is the size of our family? And there's going to be some of those leading questions that need to be answered for us to really come up with an idea of what that looks like. Do you want to tell our kind of point buying story when we first made those decisions? Because I honestly don't remember it. I don't know what I ate for breakfast this morning.
We started out like most people do. We bought basically, this is probably the max at the time that we can afford financially, that we're comfortable paying with. But as we started to use our points, as we started to come more often, which that's the thing about Disney Vacation Club, it does kind of turn you from a once a year or even every other year Disney vacationer to a multiple times
Disney snob. That's a good word for it, maybe.
Yeah, and it happens. It happens to not all, but most DVC members that I've met end up coming multiple times a year. You almost don't know what your vacation style is going to really settle into being more regularly until you just start experiencing it. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we needed enough points at one point in time to take our moms for a week in a 2-bedroom, but that's not the norm. That was, like a one-time thing. We've done DVC with friends and stuff. Luckily, most of our friends are DVC members now, so we can share points and do transfers.
Pull them together.
Pull them together for stays. But the other thing is that your lifestyle can change, and that was a big thing for us. We were living 1,000 miles away. We were coming down multiple times a year. We did trips as long as 12 nights and as short as, I think, 3 nights, right, was our shortest.
Yep.
So over time, our points grew, but it wasn't just like all at once. It was a 160-point contract, and then later down a 50-point, and then later down another 50-point. So everyone's different. Some people overbuy and have to, decide to sell them later because they're not using them. And some people have to kind of slowly work their way up to what they, see as like their perfect amount.
The main thing that I remember that we did initially was, and I'm glad we did it, was that we bought an 160-point resale contract. Like that was what we were first looking at when we were purchasing. And we bought at Animal Kingdom, which actually at the time was a sold out property. So it was sold out direct through Disney, but we still, we weren't educated enough to understand like what all of that meant. We really didn't understand, resale versus direct, all those kind of fun stuff. The dog doesn't like what I'm talking about. But we then started educating ourselves and learned, the benefits of being a direct member. And that made us then add on that 50-point direct contract at that same time. And I'm very glad that we did it that way. And I feel like that's a luxury that people buying today really don't have, where it's like, I can buy the bulk of my points resale and then buy this small direct add-on to get benefits. Because the direct, it's
a lot larger now.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It was 25 points back then.
Yeah. It was 25 points back then. It's 150 now. So it's right now, it's more of a decision that people have to make between direct and resale as that initial purchase, and then down the road, which one are they going to add points on? But for us, that extra 50 points, I think, was valuable to us because when you think about how point charts are made and everything like that. 160 would have been good back when Animal Kingdom first came online, but having that other 50 really provided us with a little bit more flexibility when it came to our point charts. And we're gonna get into point charts here in a moment, but I think that's kind of our biggest lesson when we first bought in. Derek, I know you have these conversations on a daily basis, but I kind of want to go back to when you and Annie were like, hey, we want to buy into the club. What kind of information did you go off of, or did you have a number in mind, or was it, how did you make that decision? Just wung it?
So this is my origin story is what it goes back to. We remember we were touring. So this is like the late 90s. We had just gotten married. We did not even have a house yet. Right. So we went and we toured about Disney Vacation Club because we saw the hotel prices kept going up each year. They took us on a tour there. But back then it was that old Key West. So they picked you up in an awesome van. I think I've told this story before. The vacation guide, Gib, still there, was my original person, laid everything out, showed us the models. My God, we were like openly weeping. We were like, this is the greatest thing of all time. I can't believe it, blah, blah, blah. We look at the numbers. He gives us all the, financial stuff. Here's all the points. I think at that time, there was a minimum, and I want to say it was like 150, I think was like the minimum back then that you had to buy just to get started with the club, and that was at the boardwalk. So we looked at it, and he left the room and said, hey, take your time, take as much time as you guys need, blah, blah, blah. Here's all the prices. So we looked, and how we came up with the number of points is this, which has nothing to do with even looking at the point charts. We just said, well, we don't want to come across as like cheap. So I don't want to buy like the minimum number. So we don't do that. So we're like, yeah, I know. So what should we buy? And we're like, I don't know, maybe like 170. And then he comes back in the room. He's like, well, what do y'all think? Y'all ready to be the newest members of Disney Vacation Club? And we said, yes, with 170 points, please. That was it. There was no other rationale. There was no other reason for it. Sure, we had looked at like the point charts, knowing that we like to come down because we got married at Disney in May. So we knew we were going to come down for like 4 or 5 nights in May, staying in a studio. And then sometimes we like to come back then when the Food and Wine Festival was actually in the fall, would be in like October. So we like to come, maybe for 3 nights there. So at the end, it did work out fairly well until we made the mistake, which everybody does. Everybody out there that's a member knows it because you buy it with the intention. Most do, besides Jeff. He just goes in with like 3,500 points right off the bat. Most people buy it with the intention of, you know what, I'm just going to use it for studios. So this is perfect. But then here's where the problem starts is then if you ever try that one bedroom is the game changer. It kills you because you're like, I can't imagine going back to a regular room, especially once you have kids. Because then it's as I used to tell people when I was at Disney, and I still do today. I'm like, oh, you got kids? Listen, when you do a 1-bedroom, your hotel room's fine. But my God, a 1-bedroom, full kitchen, washer, dryer, jacuzzi tub, all that stuff. But guys, it's got the $1 million door, which is the door that separates you from your own kids when you're on vacation, because you can put them in that room, shut the door, and my God, everybody can relate to it. So anybody out there that has kids, I talk to y'all every day. It's like once you do that 1-bedroom, that's when the add-on-itis kicks in, because studios are great. They're awesome. You could use less points in them, but you realize the power of Disney Vacation Club and how awesome your vacations can be is when you stay in a 1-bedroom, which I know we'll talk about the point differences from A to B, but yeah, that was it. That's my story.
Yep, that's great. And I think it's good to also clarify at this point is that you're going to have one of 2 routes that you're going to go. You're either going to go direct or resale, probably with that first contract. At that time, if you go direct, you can do what Derek did and basically say, I want 172 points. You could actually name any point number and they will be able to...
As long as it's within the
minimum. Yes. But you can literally, like we bought a 68 point Grand Cow contract. We bought that via resale, but someone had to have gone direct and been
Right.
like, I want 68 points.
Like, you couldn't have bought 2 more points.
Yeah, it actually drove us absolutely bonkers that like we had this weird
know.
uneven point number
I've gotten over it.
Yeah.
I was the same way for a while with my points. I was like, oh, I need to find like a 38-point contract out there so I can have an even number.
Yeah.
So going direct gives you that option. Going resale, you're going to be purchasing a contract that someone has already bought, and that contract is going to have a fixed number of points associated with it. Now, if you do have a magic lucky number in mind, Derek can maybe work some magic and combine multiple contracts and maybe get you as close to that number or maybe to that number. But there is a little bit of a difference in terms of how you make that decision. What is driving this decision? The point charts. And those are the things that you want to pay the most attention to when you are first getting into Disney Vacation Club and maybe making that decision of what is the right number of points for me and my family.
And Paul, just before we kind of delve into it, I just want to say, and I think you touched on it earlier too, which is so true. The benefit that people have now is so different from what it was, even when I was looking at it in the late 90s, because you didn't have, unless you had to quote unquote, take a tour to learn about Disney Vacation Club. That's when, honest to God, for the most time, that's when people first see a point chart, is when you're on tour for the first time. Then your brain is trying to wrap around it and you're trying to understand it and trying to comprehend it. So right now, because again, on our site, you can access it, DVCresalemarket.com right at the top where it says point charts. So as you do,
it's called
your
DVCfan.com.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, our point charts are probably more expensive than the ones at DVC Fan, but yeah, you can look at all.
You guys make yours look all fancy. I just put a PDF on our website. Yours looks super fancy.
Speaking of research, do you guys remember these?
I had
Yes!
a feeling.
Oh,
I had a
yeah.
feeling that's something along the lines to what you were looking for just now.
Yep. They used to give
I
out
remember
point
the
books.
hardcover ones. Anybody out there, I guarantee you there's thousands of folks that remember the hardcover dream books. They were like this. They were so beautiful. They had like a blue cover and it said dream on top. But again, that's for a lot of folks, that's the first time that they've heard it. So now they're learning about the club on vacation. You have this feel like, oh my God, I don't really quite understand exactly what the right number of points is. Oh, I guess I'll buy XXX number. Whereas now, like you said, Paul, and we're going to kind of dive into it, you get to look at the point charts beforehand for each resort and see, what's going to be the closest thing to it. Because again, there's no perfect number. That's why you can bank and that's why you can borrow. But my God, you can take your time and do your research and look at the point charts to get a good head start. Because I talk to people all the time where they're like, yeah, so I think I need to buy the Polynesian and I think I'm looking at probably like 300 points. I'm like, oh, great. So you've looked at the point charts. And they're like, no, I don't know what that is. And you're like, okay, so it's very visual. So the first thing you're going to want to do is look at our free point chart so you can have an idea of how many you might need. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like direct guides hate us these days. That was what Derek was getting around to, was because if we rewound to the 1990s when Derek was on a cruise ship selling direct DVC, and they said, oh, I'm going to go think about it. I found this good website called DVC Fan and this podcast where they talk about all this. And they're going to tell me how many points I need. You're going to be but that's the generation we're in now.
Yes.
No matter what you're buying, Derek, I know you did some, used car shopping recently, and you probably educated yourself through that process because you at the end of the day, you want to cut down on the conversations that you're having with that sales agent. You want to be able to walk.
I left everything to Annie. Annie, thank God. All the research, she did everything else. I talk for a living. So when it came to buying a car for my son who's 16, so we both kind of need a car, we're going to share it. Annie did all the research because she knows, because I will get in a place like that and I kind of tend to shut down a little bit because I'm like, yeah, but you're in sales. Like, don't you like to talk to other salespeople? I'm like, no, I'm good.
I'm good.
It's different. He's not out there like used car sales or even any car sale people. There's a stigma attached there. I'm sorry if you sell cars for a living, but
yeah,
it's different.
But that's what's so nice about it with Disney Vacation Club now, like we're talking about, is because you get to do your research. And again, I've talked to people all the time that will do their research. They'll ask me questions and say, so I think I still want a tour when I'm down there at Walt Disney World because I want to see the models and I want to get the numbers for a direct purchase. By all means, do that. The best guests that guides like to talk to, whether it's on the resale side or whether it's on the direct side, are the ones that have done their homework. So when they come in, we know that it's a well-researched guest. So never feel bad about, doing research. The more questions you have, and just get started. Get started.
Yeah.
So as Derek mentioned, those point charts are located on the DVC fan website or the DVC resale market website. Both places have them. Click on point charts in the top menu bar. That's going to then show you all of the different resort options and everything like that. I did pull up a couple examples that I wanted to just put up on the screen. So this is essentially what a point chart looks like, and it looks a little overwhelming at first. There's a lot of information to kind of unpack, but just like any chart, down the left-hand side and then across the top kind of gives you a general idea of what's going to guide this decision-making process. The first thing is going to be, what type of room do you want to stay in? So there are multiple different types of Disney Vacation Club accommodations that range from a deluxe studio all the way up to a 3-bedroom grand villa.
Yeah, and honestly, you're obviously not going to be able to predict every single vacation scenario you're going to have in your entire life. So I would say think about how you're most often planning on vacationing, how many people are traveling and staying with you, and that will help you determine what room size. And also, watch some room tour videos. We have a ton of room tours on the DVC Fan Facebook page. It can be tricky if you have, 4 to 5 people and you're looking between like studios and 1-bedrooms, and not all studios and 1-bedrooms sleep 5 people. So you have to also look at that. And actually you can see that here on this point chart. You can see what the actual capacity of the room is. So for example, across the top there where it says deluxe studio, the deluxe studios at Bay Lake sleep up to 4. A 1-bedroom sleep up to 5. But some resorts are actually completely the opposite. Beach Club and Boardwalk, for example, the studios sleep 5 and the 1-bedrooms only sleep 4, which seems kind of backwards. But not only do you need to look at those capacity numbers, but look at some photos, watch some videos, some room tours, and make sure that if you're staying in a room with 5 people, that you're not going to feel so cramped that you're ready to strangle each other by the end of the trip.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, that's what I was going to say is when you're planning these people, like Amy said, how many you're bringing with you and how much you like those people.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
It's like, for example, the cabins at Fort Wilderness. Well, I haven't stayed in one yet. Panda has talked pretty significantly about, there's a queen bed, there's a bunk bed, and you got to walk past everybody to get to the bathroom. So if they're not your kids or you're not super close,
yes,
some of these accommodations can get really, really tight.
Right.
You'll also know on the point charts here that there are different, essentially we call them view types. So you'll see that a lot of these have different view types. If we look at the deluxe studio at Bay Lake Tower, you have a resort view option, you have a preferred view option, and you have a theme park view option. And typically this is fairly consistent across all properties in terms of what your view types are going to be. They did a lot of updates to actually the view types in the past year.
So preferred view in this case used to be called Lake View, and resort view used to be called standard view. I still accidentally call them that
all the time.
I just did on our live show. But basically you can see like what is the most standard view. It's going to be whatever one is the first with the lowest amount of points.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Whether they're calling it resort or standard, that's going to be your lowest view category.
And then if it's a priority to you at like a place like Bay Lake Tower to have that theme park view and be able to see the fireworks, then that is going to be that higher point cost when you're looking at these charts. And it's important to resort view. I liked the word standard better when they used to use it, because resort view means like I'm going to see the resort. That's not always the case. You could be looking at I guess it is the resort, the roof of the resort. You could be looking at
A dumpster.
An
air conditioning.
I had a mesmerizing morning one time where we were actually at Bay Lake Tower and we were overlooking what I can only describe as like where they load out all the sheets and used towels, and literally watched these people the entire morning take these carts, load them onto tractor trailers, and send them away. And I just sat there and drank coffee and watched. It was actually quite enjoyable. So it wasn't the worst view I've ever had, but
hey, and it's also important for people to know that might be, scoffing at these rooms like, ugh, who would want those rooms? They're the first to go.
Yeah.
They're the hardest ones to get because they're the last, it's less point. So whenever you hear people say like this, or it's a parking lot view, or it's whatever, my God, the hardest ones to get at any resort are if you have the option of getting something with a quote unquote bad view in it. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. And don't build your plan based off of that, because if you do, you're never going to have enough points. I'm not showing the Animal Kingdom point chart for a reason tonight, because they have what's called value rooms, and those are impossible to get. There's a very, very limited supply of those rooms. But if you come into Disney Vacation Club and you're like, oh, I'm always going to stay in a value studio at Jambo House over Christmas, you will never stay in a value studio.
Okay, I wouldn't say never.
I would.
You should build your point allotment on reasonable expectations, and you should always add in some buffer as well.
And I would almost go to the like whenever you have three options in terms of view types, like use that middle option as kind of that median point. Use that as that average, that I need to know that I have at least this much points. And if I get the cheaper room, great. That means maybe I can actually get another night onto this stay, or maybe I can piece together another shorter trip at some point later in the year or something like that. Down the left-hand side of point charts, typically you will see all of the travel periods. What travel periods are, it's really just breaking up the points in terms of when people travel. More popular times are down near the bottom of the point chart, whereas kind of your cheaper seasons are going to be the first ones that you see displayed here. So if you typically travel between, in this case, September 1st through September 30th, for Bay Lake Tower, that is the cheapest season. Previously, this was pretty standard across all properties. Bay Lake Tower's chart here has 7 seasons. That actually kind of changed more recently. So I just put on top of that Bay Lake Tower chart the Grand Californian Hotel points chart. That chart actually only has 4 seasons.
Yeah. And so basically look at each resort, look at their seasons, because they can vary. And then you look at something like Alani, Hilton Head, Vero Beach. Those seasons are completely different. You're seeing the more expensive mostly in the summer, whereas it might be more expensive at the Grand Californian over Christmas time or through most of December. So they can change, they can vary by resort. So you definitely want to just kind of look over those, especially for your home resort, but to other places that you plan to hopefully stay.
Yeah. But I would also go back to how we kicked off the show and say, just engage in conversation. Engage in conversation with whether it's a resale agent like Derek or your direct agent, and they're going to be able to guide you down this road a little bit. And they've studied it for long enough where they really know how these things work.
Yeah, and those seasons, and I'm glad that they've kind of separated that out depending on the resort. I think the Walt Disney World ones are all pretty similar, but they're tied to when they expect those resorts to be busy. So Disney World, September is the cheapest because everybody's gone back to school and it's still hotter than the portals of the sun. So they tend to be less traveled down here. Disneyland, January, February has notoriously been the slower times. So their point charts are adjusted accordingly. January is not slow in Disney World anymore because we have Marathon Weekend and we have Princess and we have all those other kinds of things going on that tend to bring the crowds. Disneyland is completely different. So make sure you know that depending on where you want to travel.
Yeah. And summer used to be one of the most expensive, and they've kind of leveled it out a little bit more over the years.
They've done a lot better job of just reallocating when people are traveling and kind of what those things look like.
Yeah.
So.
And that's another point that I want to... Derek always does a really good job of explaining this. You always want to make sure that you're looking at the most updated point charts because they do change from year to year. Yeah. But Derek, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because you always say it a lot better.
Well, no. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest questions that people always get when they start doing research on Disney Vacation Club is, oh, I get it. So I buy the points and I see that it's, X amount of points now. But let me guess, in 3 years, that room that was 25 points is now going to be 35 points. Then it's going to be 60 points. Then it's going to be 80. So I'm going to be forced to have to buy more points. So I get it. So that's where the hook is. And you're like, no, this is the biggest reason to join Disney Vacation Club. The hands down, bar none, it's in your contract, is that the total number of points assigned to each Disney Vacation Club point chart, if you were to add up all the little points on every chart, comes to a total number. That total number can never, ever, ever increase over the life of the membership of that resort. So think about it. So that means if anything changes, because why could it change? Because dates change. What is going to be the exact week around Easter, for example? So dates can fluctuate. But if anything on that point chart, say, goes down, goes up by 2 points, then something else on that point chart has gone down by 2 points. A perfect example, and I think we've talked about this on the show, is look at the point charts for some of the earlier DVC resorts, right? Look at Old Key West, for example. It uses 20% less points. The rooms are 20% bigger. Look at the Boardwalk and Beach Club point charts, right?
Yeah.
Where you can find ridiculously low compared to, say, the Polynesian, right? Or the Grand Floridian, or even the Riviera or whatnot. Why is it? Because Disney can't, and believe me, if they legally could go back and change those point charts to the Boardwalk to make any room that was 15 points a night for a studio at the Boardwalk, if they could change it to be 25 or 30, but they can't because they just can't add points to it. So it's the fact that DVC is inflation proof is the biggest reason about why you want to join. Because again, the hotel rates are going up like 15, 20% a year. You're looking at, then you got to pay 12.5% tax on top of it. So when you realize that when you're a member and you join Disney Vacation Club, everybody uses the same point chart, right? Everybody uses the same point chart. There's not a point chart for direct members and a point chart for resale members. Anybody is. So that's why I used to love to tell people that people that joined Old Key West in 1991 paid $51 a point for their points. They're using the same point charts when they vacation that someone that buys direct from Disney right now for $235 or whatever it is a point. Everybody uses the same point chart. It's just how much did you pay for your points? And that's where the resale comes in, because you go, well, if I'm going to be using the same point charts, why do I want to pay, 40, 50% more for my points? So yeah, just know that it's inflation proof. You're locking in, today's rates at these rooms, and you're not going to have to worry about the points going up every single year. You're always going to borrow. Borrowing is way more popular than actually banking points. But the fact that you can borrow for free, and again, if you realize it's not a perfect number, do it. Everybody does. Everybody does this where they buy it, and then thousands of people get more points just because maybe they want a bigger room or they find themselves going more often. But yeah, it's inflation proof, hedge against inflation, however you want to say it. That's the number one reason to join the club.
Yeah. And along with what Derek said, that's why you want to keep tabs on the most updated point charts, not because they're going to outrageously change, but they could mix things around within the same resort. And so some of the things that we've seen are maybe the bungalows at the Poly went down a few points, but the studios went up a few points, or they changed around, add some points to like the fall winter season, but took those away from summer. So it's just always good to keep an eye on them. But yeah, they can't drastically change.
Easter moves around so much that really can impact the seasonality of points.
That's the big one.
That is a big mover year after year. Derek, I'm glad you kind of brought up the comparison between like old Key West point charts and other point charts, because the other area where you can maybe get into some trouble is maybe say, hey, I'm going to buy points at Saratoga Springs, and you go in and you buy those points thinking you're going to stay at Saratoga Springs, or you buy those points at Saratoga Springs based off of the Saratoga Springs points charts, but you're saying to yourself, I'm going to, every year at the 7-month window, I'm going to use these points at a different resort. I'm going to go to the Polynesian instead. Those points aren't going to get you as far at the Polynesian or the Riviera or some of these other resorts. So I put together a little bit of a comparison of both different
cool.
resorts.
Wow, look at you.
I can make cool graphics. Look at that. Amy was super impressed by that.
It even looks like a chalkboard.
Looks like a chalkboard. Let me put my reading glasses on. Oh, look at that. That's super nice.
In this graphic, for the audio listeners out there, we're comparing basically the different room types against what the point ranges are for Old Key West and Grand Floridian. So if we start out, and these ranges actually blew me away as I was kind of walking through them, and really just tell you the difference in seasonality and the view types that you choose. So if you're staying in a deluxe studio accommodation, Old Key West, that ranges from 9 points at the cheapest season to 26 points at the most expensive season. At Grand Floridian, that is a much bigger range, 16 points in the cheapest season, all the way up to 54 points in the most expensive travel season. And we're talking about per night. So if you actually look at these, if you're planning a week-long vacation, depending on when you're going, that price difference could be 100 to 200 points more, depending on what room type you actually choose.
Especially when you get a stay that crosses seasons.
Yeah.
Like there can be a big jump.
And there's also differences. I don't know. We didn't really point this out on the point chart earlier when we had it up, but there's also differences between how much a weeknight is. So you'll see Sunday through Thursday is actually listed, and Friday and Saturday is always more expensive. So if you want to try to maybe save some points, try not to go over a weekend, and that's going to do it. These ranges, though, get absolutely bonkers when we move up in these room types. So a 2-bedroom villa at Old Key West, cheapest is 27 points. The most expensive, 65 points. And then at Grand Floridian, 44 points, all the way up to 122 points. As you kind of compare these, you kind of go, wow, I can get a 3-bedroom grand villa at Old Key West for a night cheaper than I can get a 2-bedroom at Grand Floridian for a night in certain seasons.
Cheaper than some of the nights in a studio. Different seasons, but still, that's wild.
Yeah, so we will never, unfortunately, see point charts, I think, like Old Key West.
The fact that you can still get a point for 9 nights, or 9 points for a night. The fact that they can't change it very much is the reason we still have that.
And Derek, you brought that up earlier.
And a grand villa at Old Key West. And keep in mind, with Old Key West, a lot of people, if you're not familiar with DVC, might look, oh, yeah, that's the first resort. I don't know, it's old. But believe me, it is probably the most beloved resort because, again, the points are 20% less. And keep in mind, the rooms are 20% bigger than any of the other rooms. So these rooms here are massive. I mean, the fact that you can get, a 3-bedroom grand villa, say for like 75 points, I think 75 points gets you an hour and a half in a bungalow. Like, that's it.
Well,
So, yeah.
and that's why I bought there, and that's why I love it.
Yeah.
I love anything at Old Key West that's 1 bedroom or larger. Love it.
And
Yeah.
this is something that like where you look at value of points, and we've done shows in the past that people have criticized us on where it's like where's the break even point, or what is the best most valuable resort, and there's so many factors and so many variations that you have to play into that, and one of those that doesn't get talked about enough is how far those points actually get you in terms of a stay. We could talk about what is the most economical until we're blue in the face. But if we're not also factoring in the fact that Old Key West, potentially I can get in there in a studio for 9 points a night, but at Grand Floridian, sometimes it's 54 points per night. That's an extreme factor that you need to kind of throw into that. And that's why there is no right way to actually crunch those numbers. It is what makes sense for you, what makes sense for you and your family and your personal financial situation. So, when we're looking at that, it's really like whatever makes it make sense for you, then or rules it out. I'm not saying it has to make sense. You can actually crunch the numbers and be like, nope, this ain't for me. But it's kind of a personal calculation, however you want to look at those financial numbers and all that kind of fun stuff.
But I mean,
Yeah, and
honestly, if you're going to go to Disney, take Disney trips for maybe 5 to 7 in the next 30 years, then it makes sense to you because you're going to spend the money anyway. So that's the thing. However long you want to stay, whatever size rooms, but if you're giving Mickey Mouse money to rent hotel rooms and you don't have anything to show for it, that's why the number one thing is always, oh my God, I wish I did it sooner. I know each of us wish that we could go back in time and go, God, I wish I could get back the money I spent renting rooms back when they were X amount of dollars. And I wish I joined the club sooner. So that's what I think. I mean, my biggest takeaway to anyone out there is A, do your research, but B, get started with something. Because if you're going to go, and if you don't do it, the next trip you go on, you're going to walk by the DVC booth in a park or see it at a resort and go, oh, God, I should have joined that club. Why didn't I do it? Let me go home and let me join again. But by then you've spent more money. So take the time to do your research because if it makes sense, it makes sense.
It's the same conversation I had with myself sitting on the front porch of our second rental property that Amy and I moved into. And I was reading the classified ads and I was going through the houses that were for sale going, why am I just wasting away money every month when I could buy a house and actually be putting equity towards something and have something to show for it? And then less than a month later, we signed on a house. I feel like it was a quick.
Yeah, and to Derek's point, 2 things really quick. Everybody's got their favorite resort, and we always preach, buy where you want to stay. I went a different route personally. I came from splurging was Port Orleans Riverside for us. We were Pop Century All-Star movies every single trip. And I still have a lot of love for those resorts. So when I bought, I was like, I don't know that I've never stayed at a deluxe. So Old Key West is fine with me because I don't know anything different. Right. And so I bought a lot of cheap points. And then if I got to stay anywhere else besides Old Key West, it was a bonus. But I knew that I always had somewhere to stay, and it was going to be better than anything I'd stayed at prior. Yeah. And I kind of stand by that. If you can't afford, if you want to own at Beach Club or Grand Floridian or Grand Californian, but you can't afford it yet, you're never going to. That's going to be a pie in the sky for a long time. Buy something now, and you might get to stay there a couple of times because the point charts work out in your favor. The other thing I was going to say is don't be afraid of split stays to extend those points. Mm-hmm. You want to stay at the Polynesian, do that on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then move to Old Key West or Saratoga Friday and Saturday when those weekend point charts kind of come down to the level of the weekday ones elsewhere. So there's a lot of strategies to really take advantage of your points and extending those as much as possible. I've gotten lucky enough that come August, I'll have stayed at all the DVC properties. Sometimes it's only been one night, but I've experienced just about everything at this point. Everybody's different. Nobody's wrong. Well, Derek's usually wrong, but nobody's usually wrong. And no, I'm kidding. But DVC is very flexible in how you use your points, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to stay at a lot of different resorts and a lot of different places and try new things. Don't get so stuck on buying where you want to stay if it prevents you from getting in sooner rather than later, because the prices are just going to go up. Get something. If you can afford something, get something now and change later if you need to.
Yeah, I love the advice on split stays, because that's also how we've gotten to experience everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get to experience, even for one night, you know what you want. You know what I mean? Moving forward, you know what your favorites are. But
it helps you with that add-on-itis decision too. So
Yeah.
like if you know that you're going to be adding on in the future, by early on in the process, like it was very quick that we kind of checked off a lot of resorts,
Yeah.
almost because we knew that we were going to be adding on eventually. And so we then knew what resort we wanted when it came down
Yeah.
to that, versus having stayed at Animal Kingdom 100 times and then been like, I don't know, which should we just get more Animal Kingdom points? I don't know. That's probably what we would have done. As we kind of wrap this discussion up, Derek, what other things or any last thoughts and conversations that you typically have when you're speaking with a buyer that just doesn't really know where to start with the points numbers?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up too, just before we forgot, as I put my glasses on, is I know Lauren, and Paul, maybe you could put like a link to it. I know last summer she did in July that we have it on our website under our blog section, which is literally a blog titled, How Many DVC Points Do I Need? And Lauren wrote that.
of
So
course
hopefully,
she wrote that.
of course she did. So you might be able to find it on DVC Fan, or you can find it at the DVC resale market. But that's a great blog, just to be able to kind of get started with it. Like Jeff said too, if you have a favorite resort and you can afford said favorite resort, then by all means buy that resort. But like Jeff said too, which is a good point, don't not join the club because you're quote unquote waiting to, have enough points, say, to buy the Poly, or I'm waiting enough points to buy whatever resort. There's not many resorts. I mean, in my personal opinion, after 20 some years, that you have to own at if you want to stay. And people might be wondering, what are the hardest ones to do? And funny you mentioned it. I think we've done shows on this, which is the hardest, the hardest resorts to get. So you're thinking of like beach clubs. So when people tell me, Derek, we love the beach club, we stay there every single year, that's where we want to stay. So I'm not going to tell them, because I know you can afford beach club points if you're staying at the beach club every single year, but I'm not going to tell them to say, buy Key West points and you can hopefully get into the beach club, because that very well could be a pipe dream. That, in my opinion, I think that's one of the hardest ones to get in Florida. Beach club, boardwalk are very hard to get out in California. Grand Californian, very important to own that if that's where you want to stay. But like everyone's kind of said, I mean, I own the boardwalk. I haven't stayed there in a couple years. I think we did my wife's 50th for a couple nights. We booked my son's 21st birthday coming up in December. We booked for one night. But other than that, in the last year on my boardwalk points, we've done Vero Beach in December. We just did the Polynesian in March for a couple of nights. We do Vero almost every single year. We did the Grand Floridian last March for over spring break for like 3 nights. So again, those are with my boardwalk points that I paid like $70 some, and I'm staying at these places. But I'm also not going to be devastated. And that's a conversation I have with people all the time is, are you going to literally be devastated if you can't stay at said resort at 7 months? If the answer is no, then I'm like, oh my God, then just buy Saratoga Springs points, because you can try whatever happens to be available if you're not going to be bummed out. Or don't spend the money on a more expensive resort, even if it's your favorite. If you know that you ain't going to plan said 11, 10, 9, 8 months out. If you know, hey, we only planned 6 months out, but I really want to buy the Grand Floridian, or I really want, but why? Because you get a few extra years, but that doesn't help your booking, because at 7 months or less, it doesn't matter what you own. So if you're not going to book, and that's a very important thing to think of, and look at how you currently plan vacations. Are you able to book? And will you 11, 10, 9, 8 months use that 4-month window to jump over people that don't own at the resort you want to stay at. If you are going to do that, then it's a slam dunk. You'll be the best member in the world because then you go, hey, I'm going to book what I love. Then at 7 months, I'm going to go online and have some fun, and maybe I'll swap it out or maybe I'll move it over. But if you know you're never going to book, 11 months out for certain resorts, then just buy Saratoga Springs. Because, you're paying, for the most part, you're paying for 4 extra months to make a reservation before other people. So that's where you want to ask yourself, again, how can I plan this far out? And I think, do I have a favorite? And if I do have a favorite, will I crawl and curl up into the fetal position if I can't get it at that particular life? So if the answer is no, then buy Saratoga Springs.
You said that
One other
as
thing
someone that maybe has been there from experience.
Yeah, no kidding, right? One other thing, too, before we close out, I just wanted to say one other factor that I think you should think about when you're looking at these port charts and deciding how much to buy is it depends on what kind of vacation you're taking too. And I've noticed this more now that I live here than before. But when I'm surprising people that are coming into town, I have to look at the people that are coming in there and be like, all right, are we doing rope drop to fireworks every day and just parks because they don't get to come here very often? If that's the case, I don't need a Savannah View room at Animal Kingdom because we're never going to be there. Why waste the points on that excellent view for the 15 minutes I might be on the balcony with my coffee in the morning? On the other hand, if my parents are coming into town and they're not really parks people and they want to do the pool, well, then I'm going to be, Polynesian or Grand Floridian or some of those other resorts. So, and that can change every time you come, and that's okay. Again, flexibility is what makes DVC fantastic, but don't blow points on a premium view room when you're not going to be at the resort. Save that for the times that you're doing those resort only stays or minimizing your park time.
Excellent point.
Yeah. And you can even take that a step further with what you were saying in the split stays. And you know what? Staying near the parks, the days you're going to be in the parks, staying at Saratoga, maybe when you plan to be near Disney Springs or wherever else, if you're just going to be in the pool.
Yeah.
And I'll just end things off by saying, if you have a question, the best place to ask that question is over in our DVC Fan Facebook group, facebook.com/DVC Fan 1, I think
I'm pretty sure there's a 1 after it.
I think it's DVC Fan 1. Or just go to Facebook, search the groups, type in DVC Fan. We've got links to the Facebook group. It'll be in the description of this video. It's everywhere. But when you talk about such a supportive community, there are toxic Facebook groups out there where if the same question gets asked a million times, people get angry and people are unkind. We don't tolerate that in our group. Any question is a valid question, and we want to help you understand your personal experience just as we wanted that same, love and support when we made these decisions early on in our Disney Vacation Club journey. So please, please, please come and join us in that Facebook community. But I think this has been a wealth of information and knowledge when it comes to, what may be those factors, what may be those questions that you might be asking yourself. And I know it was so riveting that we were discussing this, that Panda even showed up and joined us for the end of the show. So look at that.
I'll be on the next show.
He's back, and we're so happy to have him. So that is going to do it for this week's episode of the DVC Show. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you all next Monday.
Panda, look at my glasses.
Oh my God, I love those. They look great on you.